It just says, give me your 200 and don't raise any from the.
Good evening. Would like to call to order the May 3rd, 2022 Little Rock City Board of Directors meeting. We would like to welcome those in attendance as well as those watching at home or streaming online. Madam Clerk, if you would, please call the roll.
Director Miller,
Here.
Director Richardson,
Here.
Director Webb,
Here.
Director Peck,
Here.
Director Wright,
Here.
Director Wyrick,
Present.
Director Campuris,
Present.
Director Phillips, Director Adcock,
Present.
Vice Mayor Hines,
Present.
Mayor Scott.
Present. We'll now take time to recognize City Director Joan Adcock, who will give our invocation.
Please bow. Dear Heavenly Father, we come to you tonight, Lord, thanking you for all the blessings you have given us. We thank you, Lord, for these beautiful days that we have and the light rains. We thank you, Lord, for all of those that are here tonight. And we ask, Lord, that you be with us as we're in this meeting, that we do things that are pleasing to you and pleasing to the citizens that we serve. We ask a special prayer, Lord, tonight for those people who are coming to Little Rock for the Neighborhood USA Conference. Be with each one of them, give them safe travel, and help them, Lord, see our hearts and how we enjoy having them here and how we enjoy sharing our city with others. Guide and direct us through this meeting. Be with our police officers, firefighters, and all of our city employees, those that serve our community. Thank you for all your blessings. Amen.
Amen. May all please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We have 5 modifications for tonight's agenda. Item M1, which is a resolution to state the additional intended uses of the remaining portion of the first tranche of the allotment of local fiscal recovery funds through the American Rescue Plan Act. Item M2, which is a resolution of support for a study to be conducted by 50 for the future of the feasibility of a deck park over Interstate 30 between 6th Street and 9th Street. Item M3, which is a resolution to authorize the mayor to enter into a contract with Delta Dental Plan of Arkansas Incorporated in the amount of $2.2 million for the purchase of approximately 5 acres of land and a 40,000 square foot building for use by the Little Rock Port Authority for Economic Development. Item 11 is being deferred until May 17, 2022 at the applicant's request. Item 12 is being deferred until May 17, 2022 at the applicant's request. Is there a motion?
So move.
There's a motion and second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. Ayes have it. Mayor.
Nay.
Just a point of personal privilege. I'd like to congratulate you and acknowledge you as being selected president of I think it's the Black America's Mayors Association. I think you're the youngest one in the history of this association. I think that is a good thing, not only for you, but it's a good thing for us as a governing body and a good thing for our city because, as you always say, teamwork. And I want to acknowledge you for receiving that selection and just show our appreciation to you for being selected as president of that association.
You're here.
Thank you so much. I do appreciate you, City Director Richardson. Mr. Moore, Blue.
Did I steal it from you, Bruce? Did I steal it from you?
Getting back in order. Madam Clerk, if you would, please read the consent agenda along with items M1 through 5, I believe. Yeah. M1 through 3, apologize.
The consent agenda consists of a resolution to express the willingness and intent of the City of Little Rock, Arkansas to accept a grant from the Arkansas Historic Preservation Program to stabilize the Pike Fletcher Terry House located in the City of Little Rock, Arkansas, and to execute a historic preservation easement for Pike Fletcher Terry House to the State of Arkansas Historic Preservation Program, and for other purposes. A resolution to authorize the mayor to accept funds from the Arkansas Historic Preservation Program to conduct Phase 2 of the Hillcrest National Register of Historic Places District Resurvey, and for training for Historic District Commissioners and staff, to authorize the mayor and city manager to execute any and all necessary applications, agreements, and contracts for its administration, and for other purposes. A resolution to amend Little Rock, Arkansas Resolution Number 15,638, March 15, 2022, to add an option to extend the contract for a third year with the Arkansas Regional Commission for Housing Opportunities for Persons with AIDS, and for other purposes. A resolution to authorize the city manager to appropriate $732,467.64 from the city's 3/8 capital sales and compensating use tax proceeds to the Arkansas Livestock Show Association for capital improvements to the Arkansas State Fairgrounds, and for other purposes, funding from the 3/8 capital improvement sales tax. A resolution to express the willingness of the City of Little Rock, Arkansas to utilize federal aid recreation trail funds for the Two River Park Trail resurfacing project, to authorize the mayor and city manager to execute any and all necessary agreement and contracts for its administration, and for other purposes. A resolution to authorize the city manager to enter into a subaward with the University of Arkansas in the amount of $175,349 pursuant to the Byrne Criminal Justice Innovation Program grant, and for other purposes. A resolution to amend the Little Rock, Arkansas Resolution Number 15,391, February 23, 21, for a one-year extension with our house for the purpose of management, implementation, and operation of the activities of the Financial Navigators Grant funded through the Cities for Financial Empowerment, Inc., as endorsed by the Commission on Children, Youth, and Families in 2022, and for other purposes. A resolution to state the additional intended uses of the remaining portion of the first tranche of the allotment of local fiscal recovery funds through the American Rescue Plan Act to the City of Little Rock, Arkansas, and for other purposes. A resolution of support for a study to be conducted by 50 for the future of the feasibility of a deck park over Interstate 30 between 6th Street and 9th Street, Little Rock, Arkansas, to pledge cooperation with this project, and for other purposes. A resolution to authorize the mayor to enter into a contract with Delta Dental Plan of Arkansas, Inc. in the amount of $2,200,000 for the purchase of approximately 5 acres of land in a 40,000 square foot building for use by the Little Rock Port Authority for economic development, and for other purposes. That concludes the consent
Move
agenda.
for the adoption of the consent agenda.
Second.
There's a motion and second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. Ayes have it. Madam Clerk, if you would, please read the grouped items.
Citizen communication.
I don't, Madam Clerk, do you have any cards for, no cards for citizen communication?
Okay. The grouped items consist of an ordinance to condemn the structure located at 4500 Asher Avenue, Little Rock, Arkansas, as a structural fire and health hazard, to provide for summary abatement procedures, to direct city staff to take such action as is necessary to raise and remove said structure, to declare an emergency. An ordinance to condemn the structure located at 11001 Chico Road, Little Rock, Arkansas, as a structural fire and health hazard, to provide a summary abatement procedures, to direct city staff to take such action as is necessary to raise and remove said structure, to declare an emergency, and for other purposes. An ordinance to declare it impractical and unfeasible to bid, to authorize the city manager to issue a sole source purchase order to Tactical Electronics in an amount not to exceed $70,000 for the purchase of one improvised explosive device custom electronics instruction courses for use by the Little Rock Fire Department Bomb Squad and other Arkansas bomb technicians, and for other purposes. First reading.
We suspend the rules and place on second reading.
Second.
There's a motion and second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. Ayes have it. Second reading.
An ordinance to condemn the structure located at 4500 Asher Avenue, Little Rock, Arkansas as a structural fire and health hazard, to provide for summary abatement procedures, to direct city staff to take such action as is necessary to raise and remove said structure, to declare an emergency, and for other purposes. An ordinance to condemn the structure located at 11001 Chico Road, Little Rock, Arkansas as a structural fire and health hazard, to provide summary abatement procedures, to direct city staff to take such action as is necessary to raise and remove said structures, to declare an emergency. An ordinance to declare it impractical and unfeasible to bid, to authorize the city manager to issue a sole source purchase order to Tactical Electronics in an amount not to exceed $70,000 for the purchase of one improvised explosive device custom electronics instruction courses for use by the Little Rock Fire Department, Bomb Squad, and other Arkansas bomb technicians. Second reading.
We suspend the rules and place on third and final reading.
Second.
There's a motion and second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. Ayes have it. Third reading.
An ordinance to condemn the structure located at 4500 Asher Avenue, Little Rock, Arkansas as a structural fire and health hazard, to provide for summary abatement procedures, to direct city staff to take such action as is necessary to raise and remove said structure, to declare an emergency. An ordinance to condemn the structure located at 11001 Chico Road, Little Rock, Arkansas as a structural fire and health hazard, to provide for summary abatement procedures, to direct city staff to take such action as is necessary to raise and remove said structure, to declare an emergency. An ordinance to declare it impractical and unfeasible to bid, to authorize the city manager to issue a sole source purchase order to Tactical Electronics in an amount not to exceed $70,000 for the purchase of one improvised explosive device custom electronics instruction courses for use by the Little Rock Fire Department, Bomb Squad, and other Arkansas bomb technicians. Third and final reading.
Are there any questions or concerns? Before I move for a vote, Mr. Moore, this is just more of a technical question, and it may be Director Collins. I do know on one of the items, because we don't have any agenda cards as it relates to item number 8, if the applicant is here, do we at least need to give them voice even though they don't have an agenda card, just from a legal standpoint?
That's been the board's policy.
Thank you so much. For item number 8, is the applicant here in the audience? If so, please approach. Members of the board and those who watch it online, generally, it's been the board's policy, even when there may not be an agenda card written for a reference applicant in regards to something that's going on within their property, from a board policy, we like to, if they want to speak, give them that opportunity to speak. The applicant did not write an agenda card, but I did notice him in the audience and want to make sure that we're being fair. Mr. Applicant.
Yes, I completed the task at hand as far as I was handed off this property. Well, I bought it from another individual that was having problems with it, but
Can you remove your mask, sir, so we can hear you? Because we can't hear you that well.
Okay.
Pull your mic.
Please introduce yourself, too.
My name is Sylvester Brown. I'm a retired railroad. Right now, I'm the one that purchased the property from Udell. And you know, I went through a long process of doing everything I needed to do as far as filing the proper permits and so forth. But that was, the permits was denied. And then, you know, as far as they wouldn't let me show the pictures in court when it was, the court procedures was video. So I didn't have a chance to introduce my information. And then when I went to court and was supposed to submit the photos and information about everything that I've changed, you know, to the structure, and then they dismissed that, wouldn't let me show my evidence, in which I was, you know, that's why I was at court, to show the evidence. And I just feel I haven't had a due process on this. You know, I'm coming in, I'm taking a piece of property and I'm putting my all in it. And, you know, all I'm looking for is opportunity. You know, I'm trying to bring something back. I'm using all my money. You know, but I have secured the banking for this. It's just been a long process. And all I'm asking is just give me another chance.
What are your plans for that property, sir?
The property is going to be a pawn shop.
A pawn shop?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you said you did have the necessary funding, you had the funding approved?
Yes, sir.
Director Wyrick, I see your hand.
Yes, Mayor. Do we have pictures of this property that we can see?
Director Collins, do we have any pictures of this property?
I have pictures with me.
I believe we have some pictures that our tech team is going to share with us.
And Mr. Collins, the date of these photos, I'd like to know that as well. This is the one where the roof is missing, right?
Yes, those pictures were took a couple days before the agenda meeting. I put them together prior to the board agenda meeting last week. So those are recent pictures. As you can see, the property owner did paint the building, so that is the change of colors that you see. But the main structure, if you scroll on down a little bit, you can see that they are still structure failures on the roof and so none of that has been taken care of, or any of the conditions that was outlined in the ordinance that was approved met. Thank you.
Director Wright?
Mr. Brown,
Yes, ma'am.
you say you have secured the resources to take care of the roof and other structural elements that need to be secured on this building?
Yes, ma'am. I had to. I couldn't pull the permit for every permit that I tried to pull was denied.
I understand about the denial, but do you have the funds available to go ahead and affect the changes that are needed here?
Yes, ma'am.
Because, Mayor, the reason I'm asking this question is not my ward, but I think we got sent the price to take this building down, and we're talking over $30,000. I think that's what I saw. Is that not correct, Mr. Collins?
Director Collins?
That is correct. And usually for rehabilitation of older buildings, it could vary based on the size of the buildings, but you're looking at somewhere between 75 to $100 a square foot. So when we estimated that, that can be the square footage, $5 to $10 a square foot for demolition, depending on what is being torn down on the inside. And so considering that it is a shell of a building at this point, that was reduced, and that's where the dollar amount that I gave based upon that square footage. Just based on the inside is, there's not interior walls on the inside. It's pretty much an outside shell with a part of a roof failure. So it would be an easier demolition, but still commercial demolition costs more than residential demolition.
And that's what I'm thinking, but this is, I think, Ward 2 and Ward 1. So it's up, I guess, Director Miller, have you spoken with the applicant about this?
Yes, I have. Let me address the applicant directly, and certainly the mayor. As I understand it, my first meeting was October the 19th, and I was asking questions about this, and the mayor enlightened me that Director Hendricks has said that she wanted to give you 6 months to get this building rehab. And so that was my understanding of it. It was fine with me because you had that agreement with Director Hendricks. Certainly, during that 6-month period, of course, you called me and told me that you had not been able to secure funds for the building to get it rehabbed, and you needed another 6 months. So yes, I've talked to the applicant, and of course I've talked with Mr. Collins too. And what I'd like is just a history before I got on this board, because it would appear as though before there was some agreement or some understanding that happened before October 19th, and when I first heard about this. So, I mean, I understand you've gone to the environmental court and they didn't give you the relief you were seeking. And so I've heard a lot of history about this, but maybe not the history prior to when I got on this board. So can someone enlighten me about that? Mr. Collins, can you enlighten me about any type of agreement that happened prior to October 19th of 2021 rather?
Yes, Director Miller. What we were looking for at that time was the building had a fire, and that's where that main ceiling or the roof had caved in. And so the property owner at that time did go out, and if you look at some of the shots of the side of the building, you see where they secured the wall, the outside wall, where that roof line had fell in. So we were looking for remediation of the building. And as part of the Asher revitalization program that the mayor wanted to initiate along with Director Hendricks for that area, this was one of the properties that was looked at and investigated for what do we need to do with this property. The property is set for a while from the previous property owner. Did not appear that they were looking to rehabilitate the building. So we sent notices. We sent multiple notices out over a 6-month to a year process to request, as we did with other property owners, remediation of the building. We wasn't requesting demolition of the building at that time. We was requesting remediation of the building. When we do not get any type of confirmation back that they're looking to do something and the building is at a point that we believe it is of a safety or hazard to the public, then we start initiating the next round of communication through certified and regular mail of we're taking you through the condemnation process, hoping that at least if the property owner is not looking to repair the building, that they will at least go in and demolish the building on their own property. That is always an option for the property owner. We didn't get any communication that they was looking to do that, and so then it come before the board for that. And in the board's decision, they granted the applicant, at that time, they had transferred property to the current property owner to give them time to comply. And that's where I do believe at that time that's where that time frame that was allotted, that because the property had set, and as I spoke with several members of the board, a commercial property, when you pick that up, you could pick it up through previous ownership from family, that they own it, but you get it. But typically on a commercial property, you're looking to turn it around and sell it for a later time, or you're looking to rehab it or rebuild it, and so that's what we was looking for, and we didn't get that. And that's why we requested, when it come before the board in October, that they would, extend, if you did extend it, that there was conditions applied to that, because we wanted it to be rehabbed. And there is major structural failure on the building that needs to be looked at, and it needs to be repaired. And yes, I understand that dollar amount that we put out there for the demolition, but it is, more than that to rehab the building. And so I understand that an applicant or a property owner may come before the board or before us and say they have the funding to do so. But we also request, if they requested it at that time, that we would say we need to see the proof, not necessarily their checking account, but something from the bank that they've obtained that funding, that it is going to be immediate. that they're going to get out there and do something and that they're going to apply for a permit. And we have not received any of that documentation to this date.
And thank you. Mr. Brown, have you heard Mr. Collins? Do you have the information to show your plan for that building
Yes.
and the bank funding approved?
The process of the bank funding hasn't been approved, but I've talked to the bank manager. I've put up some different properties, so as far as the money, it's there. It's just he has to receive the structural engineer's report in order to where we round the numbers out. But the money is there because, you know, all my property is, I have clear titles with all my properties. But the only problem it's just pulling the permits. That was always the problem. I've done the structural designs are done. And the roofers for the roof, they will not, how can I say, they will not get on that structural without it being completed first. And so they were saying that I haven't done anything to the property, and I have. You know, the structural problems are completed. You know, they said that the wall was a hazard. I've redone that. Everything that they said that I didn't do, I've done. But when we go to court, it's put in there, and I couldn't defend myself because, you know, it's my word against theirs. They told the judge I hadn't done anything. So he didn't have any other choice but to render it to y'all. So I just, you know, everything that I've been asked, I try to complete it.
Vice Mayor Hines.
So, Jamie, let me make sure I'm straight on this. I'm reading the write-up. So we passed this in October 2022, and
21.
no, oh, well, it's. Oh, I'm sorry. Well, the date must be wrong on the write-up I'm looking at. So it was October 20, you're right, 2021. I can't remember what year we're in. Jamie, so when I'm looking at this, so from that date, back in October of 2021, within 30 days, he was supposed to have a structural engineer report to you, correct?
That's correct.
And then within 60 days, completion of plans and license design, and then 100. We set this whole process up several years ago, if I remember, to set this up so we had some milestones and markers when we granted somebody the ability to go. So you haven't turned anything down. There's nothing been submitted.
No, that is correct. Nothing has been submitted. That is the process as outlined in the ordinance that we need in order to release a permit under those conditions, especially if there's been some type of structural failure. An analysis needs to be performed. A report needs to be presented so that plans can be produced, so that estimates can be done, that they can be reviewed through that process.
Gotcha. So, and Mr. Brown was made aware of this process?
Yes, and if I recall, even at the board meeting, that specifically was requested and made note at the board meeting before the board took the vote for passage.
Okay, thank you.
Director Rauer, is your hand still up?
I brought it back up. Mr. Collins, you flashed a little write-up next to the pictures of the building. Did I see that this is in a floodway?
That is the other property. That is not this property.
Okay, because I know there's additional things that have to be done for property in floodways, so I appreciate that. Thank you.
Director Miller, is your hand still up?
Yes, I was looking at the write-up again that Vice Mayor Hines made reference to, and there were 6 points or 4.1234, Director Collins, has any of those items been submitted to you as of today?
No, it has not. And I do want to, for Mr. Brown, and he did say that an application was applied for online for this property, and it was denied based on the fact that we cannot approve something. In that process, we was looking for a structure report. So a permit, just because somebody applies for a building permit, that does not mean that they obtain the permit. They're applying, it's an application for a permit. The application was not complete. We was going through the judiciary process, the citation, that all needed to be submitted to the judge for their review for consideration. And then once that was done and the judge's decision was rendered, then we brought it before the board. And so through that process, we do not change what that is, because it has to follow that judiciary process, and then it has to follow, because the board passed an ordinance, it has to come back through the board as an ordinance.
So you're looking at it's right up item number 5, January 28th, a citation appeared before the Little Rock Environmental Court. Plea was entered on March the 9th. Are you looking at that write-up?
Yes.
After plea and arraignment, plea was guilty?
Yes.
Explain this to me. I'm not an attorney. So exactly what happened on?
Well, when it goes before the judge, he reviews the case before him. He requests for the applicant, what is their plea, guilty or not guilty. And so that was the determination at that time. And then we requested through the city attorney's office, that since it was a plea of guilty, they did not meet the ordinance, that the judge dismissed the case to follow the process that is before you today, to go before the board, because it is an ordinance that we have to pass another one to raise the building.
Okay, thank you. My hand's down, Mayor. I'm sorry.
Thank you so much. Seeing no other hands that are up, Mr. Brown, you want to give any final remarks before the vote?
When I talked to the judge, and I asked him, could I bring, because that was all video. So we was having problems with, the code enforcement was saying that nothing has been done, and I said, yes, work has been completed. And the judge said, well, next adjourn for 2 weeks, and Mr. Brown, you bring your photos and information to court with you, and we will go over it. So when I show up to court, they didn't even give me a chance to show the photos or evidence or anything. That's when they showed it to dismiss. So, I was just wondering, what happened, because I was supposed to at least be able to show the evidence that the work was done and that the code enforcement was not telling the truth.
Yes, sir. Director Phillips, will see your hand.
Thank you, Mayor. This question for Director Collins. I just want to make sure we understand, or at least I understand, maybe everyone else understands the implications. So if this is denied, what happens?
If this is denied, then the board needs to make a decision on what is the plan for remediation. So again, at this, the process is, if we are not going to tear down the building and that is the decision, then how are we to remediate or repair the building? The timeframes was put out previously to do that, and they were not met. So what would be the timeframes for consideration, upon the denial of, not tear the building down?
And just so I'm clear, Mr. Brown, he's made representations today that he has done work on the building. I'm assuming that cost him some money. to do some work on the building, and if we deny this and we decide to tear it down, then that investment he made is, he's out of that investment. Am I understanding that correctly?
Well, yes, but the thing is any building repair that was done without a permit is still considered unsafe.
I understood that.
There is stuff that you can do to a building that doesn't require a permit, and I did acknowledge, as you can see in the picture, that it appears that the building has been painted. But that does not alleviate the structural integrity of the building.
Yeah, I understand that, and I'm not saying that, and I'm trusting you and you doing your job, that there were boxes to be checked that hadn't been checked from Mr. Brown's standpoint, but whatever he did, if we deny it, then, that's the cost of doing business almost, if I'm understanding you correctly.
Yes, and I cannot speak for the timing of when he did that work or the timing of our notifications. Because we did notify properly pursuant to state law and even cited properly to get before environmental court.
While we were listening.
So it did follow a process.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure I understood what our decision how it would impact what has happened thus far. Thank you, Director Collins. That's all I have, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Phillips. Mr. Attorney, I believe you want to make a comment.
Mr. Collins wasn't quite accurate. Y'all have made a determination that this is an unsafe and vacant building. You had it set for demolition on one occasion based upon the information at that time. You set a series of conditions. If you do not pass this ordinance, then you have to go back to and start over to try to establish that there is a problem because you've just rejected everything that's happened in the past. So the failure to give the engineer's study, the failure to come forward with the information for financing, the failure to get the permits, the failure to be ready to start work, all of those conditions that you set are meaningless, and we've got to start over and have something new as a reason to tear down this building. That's the impact of defeating the ordinance.
All right.
Thank you, Mr. Attorney. That's what I was trying to get at. So thank you.
We've had all the questions and comments. All those in favor of these grouped items, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. Ayes have it.
And the emergency clauses on 8 and 9.
All those in favor of the emergency clauses for items 8 and 9, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. Ayes have it. We'll now move to item number 13. Mr. City Manager.
I don't know who has the. So, Ms. Cook is passing out the resolution that was drafted by bond counsel as a result of our discussions last week. And for the viewing public, if you could pull, Angie, the item up and go to page 2. So the two outstanding items in order to prepare the documents for the board's consideration on May 17th is to vote on this resolution regarding the percentages. The board's already voted on a 20-year multi-issue strategy. And then, as Director, I think Richardson said last week, I took a stab at sort of a first step in order to have the conversation continue. Can we pull that up, item 13? Agenda item, it's on the agenda. But the board has, and I would just point to page 2. It speaks to the same strategy of last week where we are doing are recommending 30% for streets, 30% drainage, 12% fire apparatus, 13% parks and rec, including the zoo and the port at 10%, and a district court facility at 5%. So, and I do understand there's some other recommendations. So, Mayor, I would say this is before the board for further discussion and a vote.
Yes, sir. I see Director Peck's hand.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. If you need a copy, please ask me and I'll get you one, but I do have a proposed amendment for the bond election. Two changes: instead of 60% of the monies going to streets and drainage, the proposal is to reduce that to 50%, 25 and 25, with that balance going to parks.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear what she said.
Do you have the piece of paper?
I do.
Okay, so it's originally streets and drainage.
This is what
was
you're talking about
60%.
here, this document? Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so on the left is the proposal that we have that was just passed out. The proposed amendment is to the right, so it's 50% instead of 60%, divided equally between streets and drainage, with that balance of 10% going to parks, and the zoo amount would remain at $7 million.
Second.
There's a motion from Director Peck and a second from Director Campiris on the reference amendments based on the sheet of paper that's been passed out as read and written. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
I'm sorry, Director Webb. I called before I.
Mr. Mayor, I had a question about this,
Yes, ma'am.
but
I'm still, just for reference, I'm still in the middle of the votes. They said aye, but I want to make sure you still can.
I'll ask the question later then, doesn't matter.
Okay. All those opposed, please say nay.
Nay.
Present. Roll call, Mayor.
Roll call's been called. Madam Clerk.
Director Miller,
Yes.
Director Richardson,
Present.
Director Webb,
No.
Director Peck,
Yes?
Director Wright, Director Wyrick,
No?
Director Campiris,
Yes.
Director Phillips,
Yes.
Director Adcock,
No.
Vice Mayor Hines.
Yes.
Director Richardson, would you like to change your vote?
You have 6 yeses, right? So no, I keep.
I have 5, yes.
You have 5? If you have 5, I'd change my present to a yes.
Okay. 6, 4. 6 yeses, 4 nays.
So based on Director Peck's amendment has been passed. Director Webb,
I thought it was a 5 to 5.
Director Richardson changed his present to a yes.
But that's only on the amendment.
That's just for the amendment. That's
For the amendment.
This
The
is the
amendment.
amendment. We're not talking about the actual. We're
resolution.
just talking about the amendment. We're not talking about the actual resolution, correct?
Correct.
But that's what's before you now, though. That's
Change the term.
Hey, everyone, hold on. Let me get some order here. What has just happened is Director Peck proposed an amendment to change the allocation percentages. That has passed. That amendment is now included into the resolution that was presented by the city manager. We'll now go forward with a vote, but before we go forward with that vote, we're going to call on Director Webb.
My question is really a moot point now because I have a lot of questions for the Parks Department. We voted tonight on a grant for Parks Department. We vote regularly on grants that we get for Parks Department. We don't get grants for streets and drainage. We added another $2 million for the port. And what I hear is infrastructure, streets and drainage, streets and drainage. I'd like to know how many dollars we've gotten in grants for parks in the last couple of years? How much is this feasibility study going to cost for this downtown park? How many acres of parks do we have? I've looked a lot at cities around the country, and the cities around the country that are rated with the best parks are not the ones that have the most acreage. They're the ones that do the most with what they have. So I'm sorry I didn't get called on before the middle of the vote. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Director Webb. Let me take this down. Grants for parks and feasibility and things. Director Wright.
Mayor, some of the concerns expressed by Director Webb are some of my concerns. Right now, I just feel like we have a poorly run park system, and there's not any accountability for what we do, and we have parks that we don't put any investment in that get a lot of use. And so I would like to see some type of plan for how they intend to spend this money, that we keep giving them money, but we don't see any kind of plan for implementation. When I think about the ballpark at West Central, I'm looking at Rusty 10 that's been on there since 2005. But they keep getting money for trails and money for this and money for that, but never anything going into the neighborhood parks. There's no programming that goes on in our parks or anything. So I just can't support continuing to give money without some type of implementation plan for how we're going to spend it and how it's going to be done better.
Yes, ma'am. Director Miller.
Well, I'm sorry, Mayor, I thought I'd taken my hand down.
All right. Director Adcock.
Yes. At Hyman Park, right outside the neighborhood gate, there's 3 houses. Because of the street, West Windsor, right up behind these 3 houses, all this runoff from those areas up above runs down in the back door of these 3 houses. Checking with Mr. Honeywell, there's no money to correct the problem. The problem is the street drainage has collapsed and the water now goes down behind to the houses. Now, these 3 houses are at the gate to Hyman, so we're going to put money in Hyman Park and tell 3 people who live right outside the gate, we don't have money to fix your streets where your houses are not flooding. I'm for the streets and drainage. That's what we have talked to people. That's what people say. I have been out working with the Neighborhood USA Conference, calling on neighborhood people, and what they say is we want streets and drainage. Every area of this town has problems with streets and with drainage. I know parks are important, but I think that infrastructure, in my opinion, is more important. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Adcock. Director Wyrick, then Director Computers.
Most of what I was going to say has already been said. I agree with the others that have talked in favor of the streets and drainage. We have a lot of areas in Ward 7 that are suffering from drainage issues. I talked about Stagecoach Road last week. And Joan just talked about Meadowcliff Brookwood. Joan and I both have been to these houses, and water just rushes through the houses, and they have to pull everything out, throw it away. Went to Heinemann to a meeting the other day, and the grass around the clubhouse there where we have our neighborhood meetings was over my ankles. So what we have is not being taken care of, and I just feel like that most of the folks that I've talked to would rather put the millage dollars into nuts and bolts, which is the street, drainage, and fire. So, I mean, I understand what the vote's been taken. I understand this is what the numbers are going to be in the resolution, but I definitely don't agree with it, and good luck with the people passing it.
Director Peck, no, Director Computers, then Vice Mayor Hines, then Director Peck.
Mayor, we're now discussing the resolution, is that correct?
As amended.
Okay. You know, this is what, Bruce, the second time we've done this or the third time since I've been on this board. What I thought. The last time we did this, our infrastructure needs were $500 million. We spent money, and now we're here a number of years later, and we've got $1 billion. And when you look at the problem is that we need to be a bigger city, growing more, with more tax money coming in here so we can do things. If you look at what I voted for, that I applaud Cappy Peck for bringing up, you're talking about taking $15 million more and putting them in parks, which I think brings people in, brings public safety, does everything that we've been wanting to do. Now, I agree with Doris, we need a plan, but if you remember, we take this, we pass it tonight, hopefully, and then we go to the people and say, how are we going to do it? What are we going to do with this money? So that's the time we have our input. If you look at this, if you say that we give the money out, as we always have, at 7, and we may not do it this time, as Bruce has said, but if you said the $15 million over 7 wards, that's $2.1 million. If you amortize that over 20 years, we're only talking about $100,000 more you can spend. We're not saying that the couple that Joan's talking about, that we can't fix out of 50% of this money. That doesn't mean we're saying we're not going to do something. It just means that over a year period of time, for 20 years, we're going to spend per ward $100,000 less. And my hope is if we can do something different, then whoever's on this board, when this comes up again, isn't confronted with $1.5 billion worth of thing, and we're still chasing our tails. If we don't start correcting our basic problems, and I think that Kathy's right. We probably do have too many parks that we need to take care of. And we need to decide how to do that and how we thin them down. So we say we're going to put more money in West Central. We're going to put more money in Dunbar, which we haven't done. But there's a lot of little parks we need to say we're going to do something else with. And that's a board policy we need to decide. But it bothers me that we continue each time we do this, doing the same thing over and over again, and the next time we examine it, 10 or 15 years later, we're worse off than we were before. Our parks are in worse shape, and our infrastructure is in worse shape. And what we all have to, or at least I have to realize, is that every time I vote to do the same thing, the same way, and expect a different conclusion, I'm not thinking outside the box. So I applaud you for what you've done. I think you did a great job. I think that we still can go to the people and say, we're going to take over a 20-year period of time, 50% of this money and put it in streets and drainage. So thank you for your foresightedness and putting this forward. And I think it's a great plan.
Vice Mayor Hines.
Thank you. I'm sorry that we have such disagreement on this. And on the one hand, I agree we need to spend more on streets and drainage, but I also agree with Director Campuris and Director Peck. And I want to say, for that matter, I think Director Phillips last week was opining that he wanted to see more money go into parks as well. So, I think we're not all going to get what we want out of this as far as fixing every project. But as I recall, when it comes to drainage in Bruce, or I don't see John Honeywell or planning, but as I recall, if we've got instances on drainage areas where we've got water inundating and flooding homes, those go to the top of the list, correct, Bruce? Those would get top priority over all other concerns when it comes to a drainage project. If we've got water inundating personal property and flooding houses. That's not true. So, well, I can tell you as a policy of this board, that's what our policy's been. That's what when we went out and had the hearing. So if it's not, then get with me on those and I'll make sure you have my full support when we go out for public hearings. But I know that when we did drainage projects in my ward, that those were the areas that got the top priority, where we had flooding and inundating homes. And we alleviated a bunch of it through our last round. You know, I think we all need to move together as a board and be supportive of this. You know, I would love to see a unanimous vote as we put this before the voters, even though we may not have gotten the percentages we want. And, you know, my attitude on that is I think that to ignore our parks as not being part of our infrastructure is pretty short-sighted too. So that's why I was supportive of this. I think it gives value to the homes that surround them. And I appreciate the discourse we're having, but on the other hand, I understand that it's not going to quite meet all their needs everywhere, but I think this is a good step.
Thank you, Director Hines, Vice Mayor Hines, Director Peck.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll be brief, and I will echo what Vice Mayor Hines said. It's important discourse. You know, sometimes we just have to agree to disagree. And, you know, we all represent different people, different neighborhoods. I'm hearing, you know, your constituents, the most important thing are streets and drainage. Ward 4 is a little bit different. I don't have near the problems that Director Webb has and Director Wyrick has or Director Wright has. What I hear in my day-to-day activities, yes, streets and drainage are important, but the quality of life piece, the parks, are equally important to the people that I talk to. I completely agree with Director Webb. 63 parks is a lot. I forgot the percentage, but we do have a lot of parks, and it might not be a popular topic, but there are some that we could and should close. And I've had conversations about this with Director Couch. I've had them before with Director Eckert. And I'm sorry Leland's not here because he could probably weigh in a little bit. And are there concrete plans specifically what to do to what park? I mean, I think that, you know, your bleachers, ever since I've known you, Doris, you've been talking about those bleachers and those dugouts ever since I've known you. I would hope that would be something we addressed. The most used parks are some of the ones that need the most TLC. And it's actually beyond TLC. There's so much deferred maintenance here. You know, I completely support selling off some parkland and taking care of the ones that we have, but we're never going to catch up. We're never going to catch up with streets and drainage or parks. But just so you all know, from my perspective and from the people that I serve in Ward 4 and just other people around the city, they want to see more of an investment in parks. And so that's why I'm proposing this. And sometimes, again, we have to just agree to disagree, but I strongly urge you to please consider this. Thank you. It's 10%. It's not huge. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Peck. I believe we've heard from everyone. Director Wright.
Get my hand back up. A couple of things. We've already voted, so this is just discussion. And I want to ask that we as a board, if we are going to have this board retreat that I believe we have agreed to have in June, that we have a serious discussion about our parks and how to divest ourselves of some of this parkland that we cannot maintain. Because if I'm understanding correctly, we're actually about to take on a new park under 30 Crossing, which I'm sure is going to get a lot of this money. So what happens to the concern that I've been expressing ever since I met Director Peck that she's talking about? It's going to keep getting pushed aside. I've had hundreds and hundreds of kids in that park using it, but that made no difference when the decisions were made about whether or not to replace or improve the dugouts, whether to fix the bathrooms. It was just nothing, can't get anything done. Yet we keep spending money. So how are these decisions made? Because my voice is not being listened to. And I would like to think as an elected official that my voice would mean something, but it has not in all these years. And that's why I'm saying our park system is not properly run and we need a plan. So I would like for us to have as an agenda item at our board retreat, a serious discussion about these parks. If we're gonna put $35 million in them over the next 20 years, and they keep getting grants for trails and here and trails there, there needs to be more of a discussion. And we've just got Mr. Couch as our new Parks Director. Let's let him weigh in and talk to us without us just throwing money blindly at stuff and we're not seeing anything where the impact is, where the people are. Everybody don't go to War Memorial. I don't. But I go to West Central, and I got hundreds and hundreds of kids that go there. And you all know that what I'm saying is true. So why? Nobody can explain to me why. After all these years, since 2005 that I've been doing sports out there, those dugouts and those bathrooms, nothing has been improved. Fencing has been there since the 50s. But you got hundreds of kids playing on all these teams. So who makes these decisions and whose voice is being listened to? Because it's not been mine. So that's all I'm asking. Can we have this as an agenda item to discuss our parks and how we're going to move forward with this? Because we still got to get the voters to vote for it. And I know we can pass infrastructure, but I'm not too sure about parks because there's a lot of bad feeling out there. And I know what you're hearing in your area, but I know what I'm hearing in mine. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Seeing no other questions, again, what is before the board is a resolution outlining the allocations as amended by City Director Peck's amendment that was passed. So now this is the resolution as amended. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, please say nay.
Present.
We didn't read it, Mayor.
Sorry about that, Madam Clerk. Thank you, Mr. Moore.
A resolution as amended to authorize the preparation of an ordinance calling a special election on bonds to prescribe other matters pertaining thereto and for other purposes.
Move for the adoption of resolution as amended.
There's a motion. Is there a second? There's a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay.
Present.
Ayes have it. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So Mayor, one thing, I made a note so I would remember. I got some calls from people regarding the 36th Street and Bowman Road project, that C-store. And the question that I asked was, what improvements do we plan, has the city planned for those boundary streets? And who is responsible for, are there any boundary street improvements going to be required on this property as a result of this project? And what is the city's plan to improve that intersection? And what I received by email, Mr. Moore, was the same sketch that we received as a board, and it did not address my question or my concerns. So again, to be clear, who is going to fix 36th Street? How much of that is going to be required by the developer? And are there any improvements required at that intersection as a result of this project? And are there going to be any improvements to Bowman Road frontage? Can I get an answer to those questions? Thank you. That's all I have.
You heard a motion and a second for adjournment. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. Ayes have it.